So welcome to another video from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're doing another episode of From Cover to Cover, which is our series about books. Usually history books, or it might be historical fiction, and then we talk about games that relate to those books, or books that relate to the games that we know and love. And I wanted to sit down on camera today to celebrate with you. Sorry, this is a little, I'm a bit emotional, and it's because I just finished Volume 3 of the Civil War narrative by Shelby Foote. And it's just an achievement. Oh God, I'm gonna have to, whew. This series has been with me for a long time. I didn't know it, and this is just part of the poetic nature of life, I believe. I wanted to kind of really make sure that I finish this, because if you know me, I'm very well known for starting things, not finishing them. And this was a massive endeavor. This was genuinely an odyssey. It was an incredible journey. It was an experience of wonderful language, of history, of humanity, of brutality, of tragedy, of heroism, and everything in between. But I started Volume 1 on April the 24th, 2024. And I literally, I finished this and I turned the camera on because I wanted to make sure that I got it done today. It is April the 23rd, 2025. It's a literal entire year reading these. This is not for the faint of heart, but it is well worth the endeavor. I'm just going to say that up front. This is nearly 3,000 pages. It's not quite. It is twice as long as the combined Old and New Testament. It is exhaustive, and it is almost a day-by-day account of the entirety of the American Civil War. I think it took Shelby Foote decades to write when he'd been commissioned to do like a one volume for like the 100th anniversary, I think, or something like that, or the 75th anniversary. I don't really remember. I don't know, but I know that it went into something incredible, and I think this was put out in the mid to late 70s. And I was reading the front of the vintage edition that I've got here, the vintage paperback edition, and it was the 55th printing, and based on very loose maths, that's almost they print it every year. Like, it's that popular and it's that well-renowned. I just finished the Volume 3, as I said. Volume 3 is effectively 1864 and 1865. That's the kind of the way that it's all broken down. We've got 1861 and 1862 in Volume 1, I think, and then 63, where there's a lot of action, in Volume 2, and then this is 4 and 5. And then kind of, obviously, you get the post-war chapter as well, kind of what happens to everyone, and kind of what things look like at the end. I will say, you'll see this, and I have talked about this in the prior two videos as well. This is an invaluable resource. This is the Civil War Battlefield Guide, and this is by the Conservation Fund. Francis Kennedy is the editor of this, and this is this is basically just words. This is a narrative, almost literary description of the events that happened, interspersed with diary entries, speeches, a million anecdotes, and quotes from like letters and things like that, and correspondence from the time. As such, when you get into the large pitched battles and the campaigns, it's a description of those things. That's fine, but as you know, when you talk about something like the Overland campaign, there's so much that goes on during that like what you want is a book like this that is a straight reference guide. It has, here is a map, here is the order of battle, here's pictorially what happened. So when he's describing this stuff up here, and then 25 pages later, he's describing this stuff down here. You're like, okay, it is within the context of this, right? That's why this is invaluable. It also has, just like, for all of the, not all of them, because there's 3,000 skirmishes in this war, right? But like the smaller engagements, it has a very informative and factual description, like account of like, this guy, this guy, this guy, they did this, this, and this, here's the casualty numbers. Just so that, like, if you're ever, like, want to reference those, it's got them here as well. I read these side by side. This was an invaluable resource, and I highly recommend a companion read with something like this as well. I can't speak to this highly enough. But, wow. What an incredible journey this has been. If you are willing to dedicate the time and effort to this, this is well worth the experience. I'm an English person. I, grew up knowing nothing about the American Civil War other than it happened, and it was the Union and the Confederacy, basically, and loosely what they were fighting for. Once I got into wargaming, and really when I moved over here and started getting specifically into wargaming, you start like hearing the names of things. And so you're like, oh, I heard about Gettysburg. That was like the only one. What else did I hear about? That's pretty much it. That's probably all I would like have known for a very long time. I don't know if I'd ever even watched any like ACW movies. Like they have things like Glory, they got Gettysburg, and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a million more that like I hadn't watched growing. That wasn't in our zeitgeist, right? And so the more we're playing these games, like we're playing ACW games, I have no context for them. Basically none whatsoever. And so it kind of got to a point in my wargaming career, we'll call it, where I'm like, I gotta sort my life out. And this started with my introduction to the great campaigns of the American Civil War. So we have a friend of the show, Mike. Love you, Mike. He is a massive proponent of this GCACW Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series from Multi-Man Publishing. In 2023, On to Richmond came out. This is one of the best games I've ever played, period. It's one of my favorites. I absolutely love this. It was new. People were like, it's incredible. And I was like, well, if it's incredible, and I know that Mike loves it, I'll take a punt on it. This is a very expensive punt, I realize that. And I think that phrase doesn't translate into American. In England, to take a punt on something is like, I'll give it a go and we'll see what happens, as opposed to kicking something away. So that's what that phrase means when I use that. Like to take a chance on something. And he came over to my house, and we played this for like 2 days. We played it, and I think we played it overnight as well at the next day. We played it all day, and we played the Peninsula campaign, the 1862 On to Richmond campaign. And it was a revelation to me. Everything you're doing in this is the scale at which I was really, like, that I enjoyed both wargaming and also, that's the scale at which I really enjoyed, like, the American Civil War. And so it sparked the joy of that series to me. But it was also like, okay, I'm realizing how much of a deficit my both broader localized geography is. If you'd have told me about the Battle of Antietam, which I pronounced incorrectly in our Antietam video a few years back, I couldn't have told you where that was. When people are like, oh, they were like, Richmond was the capital of the CSA for most of the time. I didn't conceptually understand just how close to Washington that was, you know? And so why the battles were being fought where they were and all this kind of stuff, I just had no frame of reference for most of it, is the reality of it. And so I was looking for like a single volume kind of introductory like overview of everything that would be broadly like, here's what happened. And there were basically two options. I stumbled across this and I think it's Battle Cry of Freedom by James McPherson. I bought both. Battlecry's on my shelf. I will eventually get to that. That's a single volume, and I can't speak to it because I've not read it, but apparently it's very good as well. But I was looking around, and when I found this, it appealed to me because they were like, this is he's an author. It's a literary piece. And so in my brain was like, that will be easier for me to consume. I like literature. I love reading books. I like well-written prose. That's what I'm in something for, typically, like if I'm outside of the wargaming hobby, right? I got all sorts of classics on my shelf. That's what I like to read. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I can get an account that also is, that's rich and has like emotion in it, and it's got beauty in the writing and the details, and it speaks to not just the numbers and figures, which are important, but also to the humanity and to the nuance of things as well, or the lack thereof of those things, right? And I absolutely, like, the reviews were like, that's what this is. Like, this is an epic, but it's a story. In a way that something else that's like an account might not be. And so I picked this up, and I embarked on that odyssey, and I was hooked very, very quickly because the writing is good. It's just very long. And so you have to dedicate your time to this. It took me about a year. I know people who have read it in in less amount of time, let's put it that way. It's still a long time. But this has been with me for a year, and it's sad that it's over in that sense, because a book like this, and I'm calling it a book even though it's 3 volumes, like, it's been a companion with me. I have been reading this and have had to tell people I've been reading this for a very long time. Reading it by the bedside, switching over to the audiobook version if I'm taking a long road trip, and then trying to find my place back in the book and switching back to the book. All of that stuff has been part of my life for a whole year. And so for that to come to a close, that's why I was a little emotional. And it's over. And there's something to be said for attempting and following through on something like this. So I want to congratulate myself for having done that, because I don't think we do that enough. But also, I heartily recommend that if you're on the fence of doing something like this, give it a go. Get yourself a companion reference, because that will help. And just dive on in, because it's wonderful and you get a lot from it. Now, a couple bits and pieces that I had heard going up to this book was that there was a lot of Shelby Foote's a Southerner, right? And so I was told there was lots of Southern biases, and there was some lost cause stuff in it, like a quite heavy slant to it. And what I would say is there is a lot of focus on a lot of the Southern commanders and things from time to time. Like, at times, there's also that for the Northerners. And in my brain, when I think about, and this could be my misunderstanding of what lost cause stuff is that it's kind of like, oh, they were like heroically defending this lost cause. It was like all in vain because they knew they were out, but they were doing it anyway. Maybe I am wrong about this. I don't think I am, though, but because I read every word of this book, it didn't feel that way. What I was expecting from the way that people were talking about it sounded an awful lot like people who haven't read it. Because, like, the opening to this book, Foote outright says that, like, effectively, the only inseparable and irreconcilable difference between these two nations was the institution of slavery. He comes out and says it, like, right, he's like, doesn't try to hide it. And then at the very close of the book, it's the same thing. He talks about, like, the institution of slavery, that was it. And that, like, the close of the war meant, it was the end of slavery, but it was the beginning of white supremacy. And they all knew it. And they talk about, briefly about Reconstruction at the end and what things look like. And I don't know if I felt the kind of, at least to the extent at which I was expecting from the way that people were talking about it, the kind of love letter to the old cause. It didn't feel that way to me, at least. Does he have his opinions about Grant? Does he have his opinions about Stonewall Jackson? Sure, but like, if you can't read a book and understand that those are his opinions, I'll tell you, that's basic media literacy. So all that to say, I had a really good time reading this, and as long as you've got your thinking cap on, the book itself is a wonderful literary journey and a blow-by-blow account of the relationships between commanders and their men and the battles that were fought and the causes, and then like you get the layer of, at a very high level at least, of the politics behind the thing, where you have like Lincoln and Stanton on one side, and you got Jeff Davis and what's his name, like on the other side basically, and you get, those were some of the really interesting part, was the machinations between those guys and their commanders, and who had a hands-on approach and who had a hands-off approach, and how those things changed from time to time, and what resources were or weren't available. That stuff's really interesting. And again, that's what, at a high level, you get some of that in this. In the GCACW series, is supplies are a huge concern. And the supplies are almost entirely asymmetric for either side, depending on which game or campaign that you're playing. That was wonderful to contend with, because that looks different. Like, who's able to scavenge off the land? Who's got the freedom to do that because they have the cavalry to go out, send scavenging parties and keep those protected? Who doesn't? Who's more constricted? Who doesn't have the forces to be able to do that? Who's running off of, you know, the like pine nuts? That's all, like, and like dried corn, like that's all they've got, you know. And what does that look like? How does that translate into combat effectiveness? How do I adjudicate all of those things? That's all in different GCACW titles. That's what makes those wonderful to me. On to Richmond 2 has both the, it's got the 1862 Peninsula campaign, which was really fun, but it also has the 1864 Overland campaign, which is why I'm bringing it out for Volume 3 here, because that's also in this, and so you can kind of do that whole overland march and then the siege. You get, I think, both Petersburg and Richmond. You can do that. I think there's different scenarios for each of those. If you just want to do a smaller scenario, I'm pretty sure both of those have scenarios for them as well. I cannot speak highly enough of this game. I cannot speak highly enough of this series. It is very complex. It is very in-depth. It's very involved. It's very long. But for me, this is well worth it. So that's On to Richmond 2. I also have here Atlanta is Ours. I haven't played this. Not yet, anyway. But this is obviously Sherman's drive through Georgia to Atlanta. And then I think you also get the recapturing of Atlanta afterwards. So I think there's a campaign for that. And then I actually picked up Skirmisher 3, which has Atlanta is Ours Light, which basically tidies up some of the very complex and specific supply rules that you can get in this game, and it ties Sherman to the railroads a bit more to make for a bit more of a historical outcome, apparently, is what that does. So this is what I'm looking forward to in a series that I love, but I just haven't got there yet, and I'm looking forward to it immensely. Other games that I've got, so it's funny, I gotta get one more real quick. Actually, I'm gonna do that because this is a game that we've talked about, but I haven't played. Okay, because I was looking over my games that like, oh, what are my 1864 and 1865 games? I'm like, I don't know if I've really played any, like at all. I don't think I have, like period. Which was kind of shameful. Like, I've played On to Richmond 2, but not the 1864 campaign, so that's kind of a cheat. But one thing I did want to bring up that I'm also looking forward to is Franklin, and this is part of Worthington Games. I think it's the Brigade Civil War. Oh, okay, I want to get it right. I want to call it the Brigade Battle Series. Let me actually check that. So Franklin and I do have another one. Okay, and I'm definitely getting it out. That's my bad. We're going to talk about Hood Strikes North. Is it the Brigade Battle Series? I want to get it right. And of course it doesn't say it. Love that for me. I'm pretty sure it's the Brigade Battle Series from Worthington. This is a battle game series. So this is like, here's my line of guys, here's your line of guys. It's really good. It's not complex. And it's eminently playable. And I think this has both Spring Hill and Franklin in it. And I think that's a huge credit because so many Civil War games get really, really, really crunchy, or they're like kind of nothingy. And when I say nothingy, I'm like, if you play something like Battle Cry, which is the old Commands and Colors game, you're not you're not looking for like historical simulation in that, right? It's chuck some dice, some flags come off the board and you're done, right? It's not a simulation of a particular battle in any meaningful sense. It's a game, it's fun. Nothing wrong with that, but Franklin sits in this really nice place where it's very approachable while still being very, very satisfying. This series does, and I'm really looking forward to Franklin. Franklin's one of those battles that I was most interested in because that's where my wife was born in Franklin, Tennessee, and as such, my father-in-law always talks about the Battle of Franklin, and he was like, oh yeah, like there was a memorial and you could kind of see a couple things. There wasn't much there because it was only like this, and he kind of poo-pooed it as this like small skirmish style engagement only with a few guys, which couldn't be further from the truth. And I don't know if that was just like him misremembering that or because the monuments weren't necessarily where they were like as grand as something like Gettysburg, but he kind of underestimated the importance of the Battle of Franklin. But that was something that was so funny. So I was waiting for this like small little skirmish to happen in this book, and it was like, oh, like there was 7,000 CSA casualties, and this was a decisive action against Hood's Army of Tennessee, although they didn't know it at the time, and like that was the end of basically Hood's army at that point. And it was so funny because I was reading it and it was like this huge engagement going on, and it was kind of like this blunder and Schofield gets away, and they were like he was like recounting the casualty list, and I was like, what? I thought this was this. And they're very upfront about what happened, you know, going to Murfreesboro and Nashville afterwards, where it was like the army was broken, but the CSA didn't know it. Like they hadn't really understood like how many of their leaders had died, how many casualties they'd taken, and really that had like broken the back of that army. And it was only when they got to the gates of Nashville that they're like, oh, we can't do anything. And then you have the hard freeze, and then they turn around and leave, basically. So I'm looking forward to this to really like play that out. Because I really, really want to see that. But that's also a very, very, I think, underrated series. I don't know. Like, the people who play it really like it. And there are people who are, like, buying all of them. But I don't know if a lot of people have actually, like, tried it. And so I really want to encourage people to check out Worthington's Brigade Battle series. They're really slick games, that's for sure. So as part of that, let's also talk about Hood Strikes North. I forgot I had this. That's embarrassing. This is also Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. And I played this with Mike. We played basically the entire thing. We got all the way to Franklin, and then we were pushing past Franklin. And it was going to be a real close-run thing. I'm pretty sure with the reinforcements that we were getting for the Union side, we would have had a historical outcome. But it's the case of trying to chase them back down and break that army and inflict those extra few more losses so that you can get the points back in the campaign, which they did, you know, because they didn't chase down the Army of Tennessee particularly. But if you go out and harass them, like, you can get yourself into, you know, really, really dominating victories in this game. But this was a wonderful full day's experience of doing that. So much cavalry movement outside of just kind of marching your armies up the roads. Lots of encircling and flanking and trying to, you know, lead guys astray and kind of go on these cat and mouses. This was wonderful in a way that when, like, onto Richmond 2, when you're playing the Peninsula campaign, you're marching your big old Army of the Potomac up this peninsula, and boy, there's not a lot of space, and it's trying to keep your battle line to avoid those kinds of things, whereas this is big old wide open, and you just send your cav out, and they'll go and like cut off the roads, get the wagons and things like that. And this was a really exciting game as well. at a slow campaign level, right? So that's also a wonderful game as well. I think the rest of the games I have here that I wanted to talk about are ones that I actually haven't played either, but that I am looking forward to as a result of having read this book. So, a couple of them are kind of on the shelf of shame, and I've got them right here. For the People, big CDG from Mark Herman, entirety of the Civil War, point-to-point movement, card-driven game. This is the most recent 25th anniversary updated edition where they got nice new artwork on it. I do have the old one. Here's the old one. Just so you can see the comparison. It was in a little 2-inch box, and it's like impossible to fit anything in it. And it's got the old Roger McGowan artwork on it. I think Roger did this artwork as well for the box. Is that true? No, this is by Donald Hegarty. But this is kind of a classic one as well. But if we crack it open, what do I have in here? Oh, I've got Richard Berg's Borodino in there. I knew I didn't have For the People because I put it in this. But I'm very excited to play this one day. We will get to this. This will go on the shelf of shame. We'll play it here in the next few years for sure. But this is kind of a classic. It's been around for a while. The other one that I have is Mark Simonich's The U.S. Civil War. This is a hex and counter game with basically the entirety of the U.S. Where the battles were fought, at least, on here. And Grant... yes. Okay. Grant from theplayersaid.com, not Grant, US Grant. Grant has played this. He played a game of this years ago with a friend of ours who's also a bit of a ACW history buff at the time. And so he liked it. He knows that I'll like it. It looks right up my alley. This is on the shelf of shame. Because of me having read this, went onto our shelf of shame list this year. So I intend to play this in 2025. So I'm looking forward to this immensely. And everyone says it's good. And so I just want to get to it and see what happens and kind of make it through this so that I can attest to it, because it looks awesome, but I just haven't gotten there. The other couple that I have are ones that we kind of picked up on a whim. So the first one, and this is still in shrink wrap. Grant bought this for me at WBC last year when I wasn't there. And this is part of MMP's and the Gamers Line of Battle series. This is their third game in that series, and this is To Take Washington, which is Jubal Early's 1864 summer campaign. And apparently this has got a lot of crunch to it, a lot of depth to it. But I'm looking forward to this because, you know, it was that march up to Washington and then that deployment at Washington whilst the defenses were as weak as they were ever going to be. and kind of what that looks like fighting outside. I think, well, and he was too late, but if he'd have got there earlier, I just think that this is a series I really don't know anything about, but it's by the late Dean Essig, and his games we have enjoyed almost all of, and it's on a battle that I'm not sure how many games there are on this like battle/campaign, like specifically on this one. And there might be a whole bunch, I just don't know about it, but I hadn't heard of any, and he picked this up, so I'm very grateful. So look forward to that one. Also, very dramatic with the fires in front of the Capitol building. That's great. And then the last one I have here that I'm going to talk about today is Glory 3. Now, Glory 3 has two battles in it. It has Antietam in it, but it also has Cedar Creek, which is 1864, and that's why it's kind of on the list today. This is another Berg design from 2007, and this is one that I picked up secondhand from a place called The Source up in Minneapolis. Oh, it might be in St. Paul. It's in the Twin Cities. There we go. We're not going to offend anyone. So shout out to The Source, because they stock a bunch of war games and they sell them at retail, which is great, but they also invariably have a big old shelf of like secondhand war games. And I don't know who they're getting them from, but the prices were real good and there was just a bunch of stuff that I had never even seen before, and I'm like, cool. I'm on an ACW kick. I bought this like in the summer of last year, and I was like, I gotta get it. And so I think I paid like $30 or $40 for this. And the best part is that when I opened it, not only did it have Glory 3 in it, inside it had Road to Richmond in it, and it had the Road to Vicksburg, and it also had Glory Road in it. All with all their counters and maps and rules. These three different magazine games, on top of Glory 3. Glory 3 is also in this box. So I paid $40, and I got the 2 battles that come in this, and 3 others. So I got 5 battles in one box for $40, which was amazing. And like, I don't think that they knew, or if they did, they didn't care because it wasn't priced as such. But like, I opened it up and had all this extra stuff in it, and I was like, amazing. And I actually played Road to Vicksburg, a little magazine game. It's kind of old, shows its age, very simple. It's really fun though. Yeah, I would play it once. I got it free. Will I ever play it again? Probably not. But like, for a free game, just like had it on my desk at work and like played it on my lunch breaks. It was definitely my lunch breaks, boss. And yeah, it was good fun. So that's another one that I'm looking forward to. This is probably pretty low down on like the priorities with how much we have to play and get through. But one day I will get to that, you know? And who knows, if they ever redo those, that would also be wonderful as well. Because this is part of the Battles of the American Civil War series. And I think this is like, I don't know how much of this became the great battles of the American Civil War, but I think it's not an insignificant amount of at least the core stuff. I could be wrong about that, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I'll probably kind of bring this to a close. I could ramble on about these books forever, is the reality of it. At some point in my life, I will probably reread these, and I deserve a medal for having gotten through it. Because this is not an insignificant commitment, and I commend anyone who has sat through these, not because they're like boring and like difficult, but because this is a massive time commitment. And they're an incredibly rich resource of the detail and of the human story of a lot of the American Civil War. Because you can go and read any old history book and you can get, it was these guys, here's the order of battle, they fought here, here, and here, against these guys and these guys and these guys, here's the casualty list, here were the maneuvers, and that's what happened. You can find that, frankly, in any book. And that's fine. There's merit to that. There's nothing wrong with that. But having something that also touches on so much of the human aspect of things, how decisions were made, how decisions affected people, at every level of the strata of society in America in the 1860s. Like, you get from the, Lincoln and Jeff Davis right at the top. You get, all different factions politically of, like, abolitionists and, anti-abolitionists, that's so lame. But like every other sub-faction within those of like the hardliners, the firebrands, and then like everything in between. You get moderates, you get Democrats, you get Republicans, and that's the politics. And then you get like the industry owners, the farmers, you get the workers, all that stuff. And then you get the military side of things. You get the army, you get the navy, you get all the command structures and all the commanders, then all of the different enlisted people and the volunteers. You get the different types of volunteers, and then you get, especially later in the book, earlier you get some of the like accounts from enslaved people, but later on in the book you'll see accounts from people who were freed and enlisted into the army, or people who supported those people, or the CSA's effort to enlist in like some of their slaves, but there wasn't any reason to do it, and the complexities of all of that. You get everything from the ladies who were like sewing the buttons and stitching the boots to, the people requisitioning a million boots, right? Every spectrum and strata of society is represented at some point in these tomes, and that's what makes it wonderful, is that there's so much more to it than just numbers and ranks and files, and they fought here and a bunch of guys died charging up a hill. You get that, but you get much more than that. The descriptions of the battles are visceral in a way that it's not just the guys rushing up the hill. You get the sounds of battle, the smells of battle, you get the tastes of battle, you get the after effects of all of those things. And just the staggering scope of what you get in these novels is well worth the investment of time. And also, it's well worth the investment because it's not just a book and a story. This is also extremely educational. I have at least a foundational framework for a significant amount of my otherwise extremely patchwork and extremely limited American Civil War knowledge. There are things that I want to go and read about. There are things that I want to go and specialize my kind of knowledge in. A couple of those things are, I found the Vicksburg campaign and siege to be fascinating. So we have Thunder on the Mississippi. We also have, Grant has it. He got, what is it called? Was it Kennesaw Bayou, I think? But like a bunch of pre-Vicksburg stuff from Revolution games as part of their Blind Sword series, which is an incredible series of games, by the way. I just don't have any 1864 titles, otherwise I would have... Oh, I do. My bad. I have Kernstown. I forgot that I had this. Isn't that terrible? Blind Sword system is originally designed by Herman Luttman, and it's a chit draw formation activation game. We played Shiloh in 2024, and it was our first of that Revolution game series. Incredible. So I've got Kernstown, I have Shiloh. He has... Oh, it's Chickasaw Bayou. That's the one. That's what he's got. He probably has more than that, if I had to guess. But that there's so much more to explore. The Revolution games titles are excellent games as well. You get formation activation. You get like movement on a battle line, but you also get really great tactical crunch of like, hey, shooting through a forest or shooting across a fence in an open field into a farmhouse. What does that tactically look like? What does that do to your modifiers? You get that level of kind of crunch, but you also get movement and positioning as well, which is really, that's really awesome. So there's a ton of ACW games. There's never a never-ending supply of those games, let's be honest. But these are some ones that I have played some of, or some of the series of, or a lot that I'm looking forward to, specifically in the 1864, 1865 range. Turns out most of the games that I've played are 1862, 1863. But I'm looking forward to playing a lot more of these and having just a better understanding and a better context of why this battle was being fought, what the consequences are at the end of this, in a way that, like, if we're playing a Bulge game, I know what a Bulge game looks like, I know why it looks that way, I know what's gonna happen, I know what's supposed to happen. And if it doesn't happen, I know in my brain, oh, the Germans broke out, they were intending to drive onto Antwerp and to basically do Dunkirk 2.0. That was their goal. And, like, that's fine. But, what? 6 or 7 years ago? Maybe? We played Antietam, part of Worthington's Brigade battle series. And it could have been a line of guys against a line of guys. That's the reality of it. I don't know why they were fighting there. I didn't know why that fight was important, or what happened leading up to it, or what happened as a result of it. And it turns out it was really, really, really important. And it could have been something that it wasn't, or it could have been something very different. And knowing those things brings a level of excitement and engagement to a war game that otherwise would be, you got the blue guys, I got the gray guys. We're going to roll the dice. If I have more guys at the end, I win. Right? So, like, technically that's every war game. It can be boiled down to that. But the added contexts and the added story is what brings those alive and is a recreation in our own small, loose, free time way of history. It's what keeps it in our imaginations, keeps it in our minds, and it's always so important to have history be something that we're constantly considering so that we can actually learn our lessons, right? I think that's a big part of why we love history. We get to analyze the past and see what happened and why, and maybe we can look at what we're doing now, what we're looking for in the future, and how we want to go about our own lives. How do I go about my life and navigate all of that? History is a valuable resource for what was done, what succeeded, what didn't, what are we looking for? And the more knowledge we have about a given thing, the more, I don't know, the more you can kind of extract from that, both from an enjoyment from a hobby game standpoint, but also from like a learning and educational standpoint as well. So I appreciate you sticking with me for the Odyssey, not only of this video, but also of this trilogy. It has been a wonderful experience for me. I hope that it's been a wonderful experience for everyone who has done this, and I hope to inspire and encourage others to do this, because this is quite literally an odyssey. It will take you a long time, but it is well worth the investment. And I think that's probably all I have to say about this at this particular moment. I'm going to take a rest. I'm going to read on a different topic. And we're going to go from there. Also, for reference, I won't be doing this next, but with how successful this was for me, Mark Herman recommended The Campaigns of Napoleon, another giant tome, because I was looking for what's a Napoleonic version of this. And he said, Campaigns of Napoleon, which is by David G. Chandler. And then I picked up the West Point Military series maps of the Napoleonics War. And these are massive. And here's all the different geographies and topographies, the different battles, in the same way that I got from the Civil War Battle Guide. It's not quite as exhaustive, but these are the kinds of things that just really help me. I know my European geography much better, but here I'm looking for the distribution of forces, the marching lanes, and things like that. So I have this. This will be something I do embark upon in the future. I cannot promise you when that will be. I might read some short books in the meantime. But Shelby Foote's Civil War narrative, I am so happy to have finished it, but not in a relief way, in an achievement way. In a way that this was so grand, this was wonderful to have experienced. I'm sad that it's over. I genuinely am sad that it's over. But I am also pleased at the achievement of having done this. So thank you very much for sticking with me on this very epic year-long journey. And I appreciate you for tuning in. I've been Alexander for theplayersaid.com, and I don't have Grant with me, so I said it with weird intonation, but thanks very much.